Welcome to our channel. Today, we delve into a paradox that defines modern psychological discourse, the extreme desire for total self-reliance. We live in a culture that incessantly glorifies the self-made individual, celebrating those who appear to need absolutely nothing from anyone else. Yet, beneath this veneer of invincible autonomy often lies a complex architecture of defense mechanisms. We are looking at the psychology of needing no one, often clinically referred to as hyper-independence. It looks like strength, it acts like resilience, but it often feels like isolation. I am joined by Elena, a clinical psychologist, to help us dissect whether this trait is a badge of honor or a hidden wound. Elena, where is the line between healthy adult autonomy and this fortress of emotional solitude?
Thank you, Jane. It is a profound question because the distinction is often invisible to the naked eye. Healthy independence is the ability to govern oneself while remaining open to the interdependence that human life requires. Hyper-independence, however, is a trauma response. It is not just the ability to do things alone, it is the terrifying compulsion to do so. This behavior usually stems from a breakdown in trust during formative years. When we speak of needing no one, we are often describing a person who learned, usually quite painfully, that to rely on others is unsafe. Therefore, the brain rewires itself to view dependency not as a neutral state of connection, but as a dangerous vulnerability that must be avoided at all costs to ensure survival.
That is a fascinating distinction, viewing independence as a compulsion rather than a choice. From a sociological perspective, we see this reinforced everywhere. The lone wolf archetype is romanticized in film and literature as the pinnacle of evolution. But biologically, this seems to contradict our history as a pack species. If we look at the medical science of human evolution, we survived because we clustered, shared resources, and co-regulated. Why then does the modern brain sometimes reject this biological imperative? It seems counterintuitive that an organism would voluntarily cut off its primary resource for survival, which is the tribe. Is this a conscious decision, or is it something happening beneath the surface of our awareness?
It is rarely a conscious decision, Jane. It is a physiological adaptation. When a child's needs are consistently unmet, or worse, if expressing a need results in shame, rejection, or burdening the caregiver, the child makes an unconscious pact with themselves. I will simply stop needing. This is the genesis of the I'll do it myself mentality. Over time, this solidifies into an identity. The brain begins to categorize asking for help as a threat to homeostasis. If you were taught that vulnerability leads to pain, your amygdala, the brain's fear center, will actually trigger a fight or flight response when you are in a position where you must rely on someone else. It is a preemptive strike against potential disappointment.
So we are effectively talking about a nervous system that is wired to repel connection, to maintain a sense of safety. I want to ground this for our listeners. What does this look like in the real world? We aren't just talking about the hermit living in the woods. We are talking about high-functioning executives, parents, and partners. Signs might include an inability to delegate tasks, extreme secrecy about personal struggles, or a deep, visceral irritation when someone offers sympathy. I have read that hyper-independent individuals often harbor a secret contempt for needy people because they have suppressed those needs in themselves. It's a projection of their own shadow. How do these daily behaviors manifest in the clinical setting?
Precisely. In therapy, we often identify this through attachment theory, specifically the dismissive avoidant attachment style. These individuals are masters of self-suppression. They don't just hide their needs from others, they often hide them from themselves. You will see a person who handles a crisis with terrifying calm, completely shutting down their emotional receptors to function. They view emotions as data to be managed or deleted rather than felt. They might say things like, "I don't see the point in dwelling on it," or "I don't want to burden anyone." But beneath that logic is a core wound, the belief that they are only lovable or valuable as long as they are useful and low maintenance. They reduce themselves to zero-friction existence.
That concept of zero-friction existence is incredibly poignant. It aligns with the medical understanding of chronic stress. If you are constantly holding up the sky, ensuring you never drop a ball so you don't have to ask for a hand, the cortisol load must be immense. There is a tragedy here. The hyper-independent person often craves connection deeply, but has forgotten the language of how to ask for it. It's a paradox of starving while sitting at a banquet because you are afraid the food is poisoned. They are protecting themselves from the very nourishment they require. It begs the question regarding neurobiology. What is the difference between self-regulation, which is healthy, and this isolationist coping mechanism?
That is the crux of the issue. Self-regulation is the ability to manage your own emotional state, to calm yourself down after stress. However, humans are mammals. We are designed for co-regulation. This is the biological process where one nervous system calms another. Think of a mother soothing a crying infant. The hyper-independent person has bypassed co-regulation entirely. They have become a closed loop. Because they never experienced safe co-regulation, their brain treats it as a foreign and effective concept. They would rather suffer in silence and retain control than share the burden and risk the unpredictability of another person's response. They are running a single-player simulation in a multiplayer world.
The closed-loop analogy helps explain the exhaustion many of these individuals report. Medical journalism often covers burnout, and we usually attribute it to workload. But this suggests a form of emotional burnout. If you are the only battery powering your life, eventually you drain. There is no external power source. I'm curious about the specific mechanics of how this impacts relationships. It seems that for the hyper-independent, a partner offering help feels like an insult or an encroachment. It's almost as if intimacy is misinterpreted as incompetence. If I let you help me, it proves I cannot do it, which means I am unsafe. Is that the internal monologue?
Yes, and it is even more specific than that. To the hyper-independent, receiving help feels like indebtedness. They view relationships as transactional ledgers. If you do something for me, I now owe you, and owing you gives you power over me. Powerlessness is their ultimate trigger. Therefore, they reject help to maintain a balance of power where they are always the creditor, never the debtor. They are often the most generous friends and partners, always giving, because giving feels safe. It maintains control. Receiving, on the other hand, requires surrender. It requires dropping the shield and exposing the soft underbelly, and their nervous system screams danger the moment that dynamic shifts.
This transactional view of human connection is tragic because it strips intimacy of its spontaneity and grace. It turns love into accounting. I want to pivot to the somatic aspect. We know that the body keeps the score. People who refuse to lean on others often develop physical manifestations of this rigidity: tight shoulders, locked jaws, chronic pelvic pain. The body is literally bracing itself against the world. From a medical standpoint, this chronic guarding keeps the sympathetic nervous system in overdrive. They are ready to fight or flee 24/7. Elena, how do you even begin to dismantle a defense mechanism that has been reinforced for decades?
Dismantling it requires immense patience. We cannot simply tear down the wall. That wall saved their life at one point. We must honor the defense before we ask it to step down. The process begins with titration, taking tiny drops of vulnerability. We don't start by asking them to sob on a shoulder. We start with small, low-stakes requests, asking a colleague to pass a file, admitting to a friend that you are tired. We are testing the hypothesis that dependence equals danger. When they take a small risk and the world doesn't end, when they are met with safety rather than rejection, the brain begins to form a new neural pathway. We are slowly proving that the old map no longer describes the territory.
That concept of honoring the defense is vital. It frames the behavior not as a defect, but as a survival strategy that has simply outlived its usefulness. We are shifting the narrative from "I am broken" to "I am adapting." However, there is a societal friction here. We live in a world that validates the hyper-independent. They are the high achievers, the ones who have it all together. Giving up that identity can feel like a loss of status. How do we convince someone that the messiness of interdependence is actually superior to the clean, controlled, sterile safety of isolation? What is the reward that outweighs the risk?
The reward is resonance. It is the feeling of being truly known. You can be admired from a distance for your strength, but you can only be loved up close for your vulnerability. The hyper-independent person is often lonely in a crowded room because they present a curated avatar to the world. The reward of dropping the shield is that you stop performing and start living. It is the relief of setting down a heavy backpack you didn't realize you were wearing. We move them toward the concept of interdependence, a state where two whole people lean on each other without collapsing. It is structural stability through connection, like an arch, which is stronger than two solitary pillars.
The arch is a perfect metaphor. It requires both sides to lean in. If one pulls away, the structure fails. This brings us to the practical application of interdependence. It requires a new vocabulary. Instead of "I can handle it," it's "I could use some support." Instead of "I'm fine," it's "I'm struggling today." These seem like simple semantic shifts, but for the people we are discussing, these words feel like swallowing glass. It requires a conscious override of the impulse to withdraw. It involves checking the facts. Is this person actually dangerous, or am I projecting that ghost from my past onto them?
Exactly. We call this reality testing. The brain predicts the future based on the past. If your past was rejection, your brain predicts rejection. To change this, you must engage in corrective emotional experiences. You have to let someone see you, even just 10%, and let them surprise you with kindness. It is also important to differentiate between need and want. The hyper-independent person hates needing, but in healthy relationships, we don't just need each other for survival, we want each other for enrichment. Shifting the framework from "I am weak, so I need you" to "I value you, so I include you" restores a sense of agency. You are choosing connection, not collapsing into it.
That restoration of agency is key. It allows the individual to maintain their dignity while accessing support. As we near the end of our analysis, I want to touch on the long-term health implications. Studies show that loneliness and social isolation are as damaging as smoking 15 cigarettes a day. Hyperindependence is effectively self-imposed emotional isolation. By addressing this psychology, we aren't just improving mental health. We are likely extending life expectancy, improving cardiovascular health, and boosting immune function. The body functions better when it knows it is part of a tribe. We are biologically wired for the we, not just the me.
That is the biological reality. We co-regulate our heart rates, our breathing, and our hormones with those we trust. To deny this is to fight our own biology. Healing from hyperindependence is a journey of grief, grieving the child who had to be strong too soon. But it is also a journey of hope. It is learning that you are not a burden. It is understanding that your needs are not design flaws. They are the connectivity ports for human relationship. The strongest people are not those who need no one. They are the ones who have the courage to admit they cannot do it alone.
This has been an illuminating discussion. We have traveled from the deceptive allure of the lone wolf to the biological necessity of the pack. For our listeners who see themselves in this description, Recognize that your independence was a gift you gave yourself to survive, but perhaps it is a tool you can now set down, or at least use less frequently. You have survived the storm. You don't need to keep living as if the hurricane is still overhead. Connection is not a trap. It is the shore. Thank you, Elena, for unraveling the complex layers of this psychological defense.
It has been my privilege. If I may leave you with one final thought. True independence is knowing you can handle life on your own, but choosing not to. It is the freedom to walk the path alongside others. Do not let your history of survival prevent your future of connection. You are allowed to rest. You are allowed to be held. And most importantly, you are allowed to need. Until next time, take care of yourselves, and perhaps let someone else take care of you too.